By 2025, Gen Z, those born between 1997 and 2012, will make up around 27% of the global workforce. That's not just a passing trend, it's a seismic shift. This generation isn't dipping its toes into the workplace. They're cannonballing in, bringing with them new expectations, sharper digital instincts, and an entirely different definition of success. Remote work surged out of necessity during the pandemic. But for Gen Z, it's more than a temporary shift. It's how they were trained, how they were educated, and how they expect to work. Virtual classrooms, Zoom internships, Slack check-ins, that's been their normal. So when they enter the job market, they're not just hoping for flexibility. They're demanding it. This demand is changing everything. From how jobs are advertised, to how meetings are run, to how loyalty is earned. Companies that don't keep up? They risk losing out on some of the most tech-savvy, purpose-driven employees available today. Let's look at what Gen Z really wants. For starters, they crave choice. A recent study found that 17% of Gen Z workers prefer fully remote jobs, and over 20% are already working mostly from home, source. But they're not anti-office. In fact, many value occasional in-person collaboration, especially for team bonding or mentorship. What they don't value? Being forced into rigid 9-to-5 routines that offer no flexibility. An eye-opening 74% of Gen Zers have left or considered leaving a job due to inflexible remote work policies, source. That's not a small number. And only 6% are gunning for leadership roles in the traditional sense. They care more about autonomy, mental health, and meaningful impact than they do about titles. We're also seeing the rise of something called micro shifts. Gen Z doesn't always want to work in long blocks. They prefer short, focused work sprints. Over half of micro shift workers today are General Z. It's part of a larger trend toward asynchronous, self-managed work styles, source. And here's where things get really futuristic. While older generations might feel threatened by tools like ChatGPT or automated scheduling, 63% of Gen Z say AI enhances their productivity. They don't see it as competition, they see it as a co-pilot. 74% even believe generative AI will significantly change how they work within the next year, source. Location-wise, Gen Z is all over the map. Literally. They're not just working from home, they're working from Airbnbs in Portugal, cafes in Tokyo, or co-working spaces in Mexico City. Digital nomadism is becoming more than a buzzword, it's a career choice, especially as more remote job opportunities open globally. Take, for example, remote jobs in the Philippines that pay well, which many Gen Zers are using as launchpads for international careers. But even with all this freedom, there are downsides. Many Gen Z nomads report feelings of isolation and burnout. Freedom can sometimes come at the cost of connection. In terms of behavior, Gen Z is flipping the script on workplace norms. Ever heard of task masking? It's a new phenomenon where employees stay visibly busy with low-value tasks to avoid scrutiny. It's less about laziness and more about adapting to remote environments that often prioritize appearances over outcomes, source. And while they're digitally fluent, that doesn't mean they're naturals at in-person communication. 40% say they prefer texting to talking. 74% struggle with face-to-face small talk at work, source. That creates a real challenge for company culture and collaboration. On the career front, Gen Z is mobile. Extremely mobile. 35% would quit their job with no backup plan, and more than half don't see themselves staying in one role for more than 5 years, source. And in response to outdated hiring practices, some have turned to career catfishing, tweaking or inflating their resumes just to get through the black hole of HR filters, source. So what should employers do? First, embrace flexibility. If your company is still clinging to a mandatory office schedule, you're going to lose talent. Gen Z thrives in environments that trust them to deliver, not clock in. Second, support their communication style while helping them build real-world skills. Mentorship programs, casual meetups, and microchats can make a huge difference. Third, blend tech training with emotional intelligence development. Don't just teach them how to use AI. Teach them how to lead with empathy. And finally, take hiring seriously. Don't just post a job. Build a pipeline. Hire Basis, for instance, gives you access to over 66,000 remote-ready job seekers, source. And if you're hiring virtual assistants or customer support staff, make sure you know how much to pay them in 2025 to stay competitive. The bottom line? Gen Z isn't the future of work. They're the present. The question isn't whether companies should adapt to Gen Z, it's whether they can afford not to.